What's going on, YouTube? Tom here, and we're back for Maxamet Sharpening. This is going to be pretty interesting. I've done one of these things before, and it went pretty darn well. Went off without a hitch, really, and I'm hoping this second sharpening goes as such as well. A little bit nervous about this one. I'm going to try a different scratch pattern than what I did last time. I think we sharpened at about 17 degrees per side last time, so that's pretty much what we're going to start on. I'm going to grab my angle cube here. I have a little bit of a new camera setup, so let me know if everything looks a little bit nicer because I got a different camera and it's mounted to my new workstation, which I'll bring a video on the new workstation here in a bit. But let me know if the quality's better, the audio quality's better, the camera shakes more or something. Just give me a heads up. Let me know what the quality looks like. So we're going to start here at 17 degrees per side and see how it comes out and see if it matches up to the existing bevel, which it should, or be darn close. All right, we got these set at about 17 degrees per side. We're going to go ahead and see where we're removing Sharpie. So that'll give me kind of an idea of how I got it set up here. That side looks pretty darn good. That side we're a little bit too steep. And that side looks good now as well. So let me see what these are coming in at officially as the angle. This side you're looking at about 16.8. 16.75. That is close enough for me. Doesn't have to be spectacular. So like I said, I've done one sharpening on this. I've rolled through or dulled that edge by now through about a week and a half of use at work. It's held an incredible edge. I'll have episode 2 of the Maxamet experience coming up here soon. I'm going on a trip I'll leave tonight, and then I won't be back until Monday. So I'm hoping to maybe get that up on Monday. So be on the lookout for that. But anyhow, we're just going to go ahead and sharpen here, trying to keep the burr as small as possible on a hard steel like this. That nasty crunching noise you guys hear is me trying to get all the way down back here by the Picasso. With the wicked edge stones, the way that lip of the stone, like right here, works, it won't let you get all the way back there on something that doesn't have a choil like these Spydercos. Not a big deal. I'll probably add one to this eventually. Flashlight here. That's pretty much key when you're sharpening anything like this. If you use a flashlight, it's really, really easy to see where there's a burr and if there's a burr before you can really feel it. I can see right now, I got a burr pretty much going the entire length of this, just a little bit back here at the heel that I haven't touched yet. Let's take a look at it now. Looking pretty darn good. So last time what I did as far as my last Maxamet sharpening is concerned, I basically am doing what I did now, I did then what I'm doing now, and then I use the forward or back to forward, heel to tip, wicked edge strokes, and I worked all the way up through my progression and just didn't really like the edge that came off of it. So I eventually just went through the whole progression doing the up and down strokes like that. What I'm gonna do this time, and I've done this with other knives and I've gotten pretty good results, is you go tip to heel. And what that does is it pushes the scratch pattern facing backwards. So if you're doing any sort of, slicing cuts, those little micro teeth that it forms, they want to cut a little bit better. So that's pretty much what I'm going to go for with this one. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get a scratch pattern moving that way, just because of the fact, especially on something like a Spyderco that doesn't have that sharpening choil, as you're moving from tip to heel, the stone back here at the very heel is kind of tough to get in there. So we're going to go ahead and flip the bird to the other side here. So far it's sharpening up pretty darn easily. Well, for a steel like Maxamet, that is. Welcome to the stream, whoever joined. We're just sharpening up some Maxamet here. I'm leaving on a trip and I didn't want to leave with a dull knife. I pretty much dulled this after about a week and a half of use or so. And, heavy use, I should say. I've used it to cut just about everything I possibly can, and it's held up beautifully. It could still kind of cut computer paper by the time I was done. The edge stability on Maxamet's pretty fantastic. And there was no chipping. What's interesting about Maxamet, though, is when it dulls, the edge doesn't roll. I'll be talking about it in episode 2 of the Maxamet experience, because I had a theory of how this would break down, or how the apex would break down, and I was pretty much right in how that works. So like I said, we're just trying to keep the bird pretty much as small as possible. So I'm checking with a flashlight. You can obviously see it before you can feel it. We're looking pretty good here for the most part. We're going to go ahead and flip it again. I'm just trying to remove any of the fatigue steel right there on the very apex. The progression that we're going to be going with is 200, 600, 800, and 1,000 diamond, and then 1,200 and 1,600 ceramic. The exact same progression we went last time, but like I said, we're changing up the scratch pattern from just being an up and down scratch pattern, but we're going to go tip to heel as far as the scratch pattern goes. It just makes a better edge finish for slicing, in my opinion. All right, looking pretty good. I'm going to flip it one more time. All right, we're looking pretty darn good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of try and minimize the burr, and then I'll move on to the 600. Take a look. All right, that's looking pretty good. So this is something I've been doing recently on the Wicked Edge. What I do now is I move on to the 600, the green side here, and I still maintain those up and down motions. What I find, I make sure I apex on those stones. What I find is that on the 200s, the diamond particles sit up kind of farther than on the 600, so it actually sharpens a little bit differently than what the 600 does. So sometimes even though you're fully apexed on the 200s, it might not be completely apexed on the 6s, if that makes sense. It's just something I've noticed, and I tend to get crisper edges if I do the exact same thing on the 600s. Make sure I'm apexed and then move on. From there on, you don't really have to check anymore, but it's just off the 600s, you really got to make sure that you're apexing. See, I just worked on that side a little bit, and I'm not apex, so that's what I'm talking about. You got to work a little bit more on the 600s to make sure that you're completely apexed. For anybody viewing right now, any questions at all? Comments, concerns? Not completely yet. We're looking pretty darn good on that side. We're gonna go ahead and flip it. What I've found now, this is my second sharpening on Maxamet. What I've found is Maxamet doesn't really like to form a huge burr unless you make it do that. If you don't make it do that, it wants to keep a pretty small burr, and it's kind of tough to see or easy to see with a little flashlight like this, but it's hard to feel. So even though it looks like it's just a small burr, it's all the burr you really need. Once you see that little bit, you're pretty much good to go. All right, we're looking pretty darn good here. So one of the things that I do to make sure that I'm removing the previous scratch pattern, especially if I'm trying to switch the scratch pattern up, is I Sharpie the entire bevel. That's what I do initially as well to make sure that I'm on the right angle. But this is a good way to know that you've completely removed the previous scratch pattern, because the Sharpie soaks down into the little crevices. Like let's say I just got done with the 200 grit. The Sharpie will soak down into the little crevices as far as that 200 grit made scratches, and then when the Sharpie's gone, obviously you know that you've reached the bottom of those scratches. So, and like I said, we're gonna go tip to heel on these strokes. This isn't normal for a wicked edge. I'm gonna see if maybe I can promote a little bit better cutting ability through slicing. So let me grab another knife over here. So I do a lot of draw cuts like this, pulling, and if you get those little micro teeth that it's got pointing back this way, as you're pulling it wants to cut a little bit better. With the wicked edge, you're pushing normally with the wicked edge strokes going heel to tip, you're getting the little micro teeth or micro serrations that it forms going this way towards the tip, and when you're pulling stuff, those teeth aren't facing the correct way to cut things well. It just cuts so much more aggressively if you do it the opposite way around. If you're hand sharpening and you're doing the longer sweeping strokes like this, that's how the scratch pattern forms. That's how it looks, and that's why I think some of my hand sharpened edges have a little bit more bite to them and cut a little bit better. So I've done this with a couple other different steels, not Maxamet yet. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to see if this will switch scratch patterns pretty easily or not. If you're just joining the stream, welcome to the stream. We're doing some Maxamet sharpening. This is the second time I've sharpened it, so we're kind of seeing how it behaves. The first time went pretty well, so I'm hoping this time is going to go just as nicely. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I'd be glad to answer them. Seems like it's switching the scratch patterns up pretty darn easily. It's going pretty well so far. I hate going this way because you hear that banging into the ricasso all the time, but if it gets you a better edge, that's what I'm going to do. We're looking pretty good. We still got work to do for sure. I'm loving the steel so far. This is one of my favorites to use. I've been using it for a little over a month now, using it for every possible task. I've cut hundreds of feet of cardboard with it. I've cut zip ties, big plastic bottles, anything, pretty much anything that you can imagine I've tried to cut with it, and it's done great. No chipping, no rolling. I've been very, very impressed. This steel gets criticized quite a bit for being chippy and brittle and difficult to sharpen, and I haven't seen that. It seems to be that if you respect it and use it the way that it's supposed to be used, it'll treat you right. If you're just joining, welcome to the stream. We're doing some Maxamet sharpening. This is my second sharpening on Maxamet, and the first time went beautifully, no issues whatsoever. Came up nice and sticky sharp, and I'm hoping this time goes just as well. We're on the 600 grit right now, and we'll go all the way to 1600. So stay tuned. Probably got about another 45 minutes or so, and then we'll be all finished up here. Any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll be glad to answer them. It's not a big deal. From what I've found, that like I said, this is my second time, and the part I'm always really nervous about is the 200 grit. You know, something real coarse like that. I've seen people have issues with that, especially if you try and switch up the scratch pattern. And I tried to force it to chip last time by switching up the scratch pattern. I was going vertically up and down with like scrubbing strokes like this, and then I switched it to go heel to tip. And that's pretty difficult on a steel, especially if one of those bigger chunks of diamond in the 200 catch that the scratch pattern. It could possibly rip the edge out, which I think is what happened to Super Steel Steve when he was sharpening on live stream as well. So I tried to force it to do that, and I had no issues, and that was off the factory edge, which I would have to assume that's going to be the weakest time, or the weakest that steel is going to be, is off the factory edge, more than likely being overheated or heated up a little bit more than what it should be. As far as reprofiling, I haven't tried yet. I will before the end of the Maxamet experience. I'll drop it down to something like 15 degrees. Right now we're at 16.8. I know, oddly specific, but that's pretty much what the factory angle was. But I'll drop it down to something like 15, and I have a feeling I'm going to be here for a while when I do that. It'll probably be a couple-hour project, 3 or 4 hours. But I haven't tried it yet. I'm not really looking forward to it, but I'm going to do it for science. I've never had a steel like Maxamet. It's super aggressive too when it's cutting. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. It's cool that you found me on Instagram. I feel like a lot of people are the opposite. Find me on YouTube and venture over to my Instagram. I've done quite a few cut tests at this point, and I got a bunch more lined up, and I'm glad that you're catching up on some of the videos. I'm hoping that I'm getting better every time that I post one, but it's cool that you found me. I appreciate it. The scratch pattern's looking really good. Normally after the 600 grit here, I can kind of rub, like really lightly rub my finger down here. You can feel those little micro serrations kind of bite into your finger. Yeah, as long as you have the correct stuff to sharpen it, it doesn't seem like it's too much different than any other steel. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. I definitely recommend something with diamonds. If you're using anything other than diamonds, you're probably going to struggle. I think that's where a lot of the issues come up for a lot of people. I don't know if you've looked into some of the other videos like the Apostle P. All right, if you got a wicked edge, you're good to go then. So, yeah, it's not a big deal to sharpen really. The only thing that I can recommend is you use light pressure, so you don't want to be pushing too much. That's important on every stone, but really the lower grit stones, so you're not tearing into the steel, as well as trying to keep the burr to a minimum. If you raise up a big burr and you go to flip it, this is such a hard steel that burr, instead of wanting to just flip, is more likely to actually break off and just leave your edge in chunks. So that's pretty much what I've kept it to, is just light pressure and keeping the burr as small as possible, and it seems to be working perfectly fine. I really, other than the feel of the steel, it doesn't seem like it sharpens up much more difficult than any other steel. Like it sharpens real similar to something like S30V in that regard. You just got to use a little bit more care with it. This whole edge is looking pretty darn good. I just got a spot out here at the tip. I'm trying to make the scratch pattern as perfect as possible. I got a piece out here at the tip that doesn't look quite as good. I could move on to the next stone right now, but I'm just trying to make sure everything looks good to go. Sure does have a lot of bite off the 600 grit. That's what I'm really liking Maxamet for that reason alone, is it's very, very, very aggressive. I'm excited to get the next episode of the Maxamet experience up. I have an upgrade. So as far as the tip to heel strokes, I've done the heel to tip strokes. I kind of explained it real early on in the live stream. I got another knife here to kind of demonstrate why. Something real fine grained. This is super blue. Something real fine grained like this, and this in LC200N, I've found that I've had the best results with going from heel to tip. It doesn't really matter. Something fine grained like this, it seems to take a much finer edge, and you don't really have like a lot of people call them micro serrations. There's basically, no matter, unless you're taking it to something like 5, 6, 7,000 grit, you're gonna have little teeth to your edge, the little micro serrations. You can't see them, but you can feel them, and that's kind of what helps you cut something more abrasive like cardboard or paper. But on a what am I looking for? A thicker or coarser grained steel, if you're doing that kind of stuff going heel to tip, it leaves that edge pretty, I'm losing my train of thought here. It basically leaves the micro serrations really big and facing forward. So if they're facing forward like this, like let's pretend there's little serrations that are all facing forward all down this edge. If you're pulling through stuff, which is a lot of what people do, like if you're opening a box and you're going like this and pulling down it, or slicing through a piece of cardboard, those serrations are facing the opposite way of what you really want them to be facing. You want them to be facing backwards, so as you're pulling that, they're grabbing at the material that you're trying to cut through, and it cuts easier. It for some reason the performance is just so much better doing that. So my previous time with Maxamet, I tried that first. I tried heel to tip, just to see what kind of edge I got. I wasn't really happy with the aggression I got out of it. It seemed to just kind of want to bounce off material, and so I changed to something different. So instead of doing the heel to tip stuff, I just did the up and down scrubbing motions throughout the entire progression and just made sure that I deburred properly and then strapped on a basswood strap with 1 micron spray on it. And I really liked the edge that came up off of that. But part of the Maxamet experience is I'm trying to find different edge finishes and different ways I'm facing those micro serrations that maybe work a little bit better for the steel. So last time I really enjoyed the way that it took an edge last time, but this time I'm just trying something a little bit different to maybe see if maybe I can get better edge retention or maybe more aggression out of the edge. We'll kind of see. The stones were relatively new last time. My 800, 1000, 1200, and 1600 were all relatively new, so I have a feeling the edge is going to be a little bit finer this time now that they've broken in and I've gotten a couple more knives on it. It's just something I've noticed kind of throughout sharpening that if you have something with a coarser grain structure, like I'd say anything S30V and above, it tends to perform a little bit better with this kind of motion. The only bad thing about this type of motion is it's kind of unnatural for these kind of, for a Spyderco especially. If you have something with a big sharpening choil that's easy to get back to, with a Spyderco you have probably a good 1/8 inch to 1/16 inch spot that it really doesn't want to get back into, which kind of sucks. Yeah, that is true. You're a lot less likely to cut yourself, but you'll see here in a minute, once I get this, there is something I kind of like to do. So I don't know if you've noticed this as well with your Wicked Edge. I don't know if this is just the Go system. I don't know if you have, something a little bit extra, or one of the 130s or something. But what I've noticed is with the going away from the edge strokes is it kind of seems to just leave the burr there, but it's just forming it to be in line with the edge. So what I do at the end of every stone after the 200 grit basically is I'll go like this and I'll just drop it down as I'm moving forward. And what that's doing is it's going into the edge. I'm using very light pressure, and it basically just cuts that burr off. So I've gotten better edges off of that too. It's the Wicked Edge it's been a little bit of a learning experience for me to finally get the edges that I wanted to off of it. I had a KME for a while, and that was quite a bit easier to get good edges off of. It's not quite as solid as this, and it's not quite as easily repeatable like the Wicked Edge, but I feel like I got better edges off of it quicker, if that makes sense. I think the Wicked Edge is a better system, though, if you're willing to put in the time to kind of learn the ways that it works best. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about this after the 600 grit. So I'm going to do those dropping strokes now. Yeah, I want the 130, but I didn't want to spend the money on it. I had about $500 wrapped up in my KME before I sold it, and then just tried to learn freehand, and I'm okay with freehand, but not nearly as good as I am with a guided system. It's hard to learn all the little intricacies. It's a tough word. It's hard to learn all the little intricacies of a system right off the bat. It's something that you kind of learn as you use it more and more, what kind of stuff works best with it. So those are the strokes that I kind of use to kind of cut the burr off. And honestly, it's very noticeable. I get a much cleaner edge after just those couple of strokes. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the 600 or the 800 and 1,000, or yeah, 800 and 1,000 diamond. I probably got about 10 knives in on them now. So they're pretty much nice and broken in at this point. That's the kind of stroke, though, that you got to be kind of careful not to cut yourself. Yeah, the Wicked Edge customer service seems great for, I mean, they better be for as much as they cost. But the only gripe I have with the Wicked Edge so far is the stone cost. And even then, I can kind of see why. I mean, you're getting 2 stones per grit. I mean, I think these are like $80, $90 for a set of 2. So, I mean, it's expensive, especially if you wear them out relatively quick. But, yeah, it's a good system. It's probably my favorite I've had so far. I wouldn't mind trying something like a, I'm going to re-Sharpie this up too to make sure I'm removing that previous scratch pattern. I wouldn't mind trying something like a Hapstone or even a, oh shoot, what's the other one? TS Prof. Those both seem really, really nice as well. See, I'm not too familiar with the way the 130 works. I just know it's very expensive and quite a bit more capable than something like the Go. That's interesting that you had a cam jam up on you. I had an issue with my KME when I had it. There's 2 little ball bearings that sit behind the jaws that enable it to rotate. There's a plate behind those ball bearings. Those ball bearings pretty much wore straight through and then wouldn't let the jaws sit level, so I get different angles on both sides, which was super annoying, but they will fix that as well. Mine wasn't nearly as bad as some other people's, though. Seems to be taking a great edge finish so far. The scratch pattern is progressing nicely. I've got a little bit of shine to it now. I'm starting to be able to see my stones in the edge as I'm moving past them just after the 800 diamond. What I've noticed is the ceramics have worn in. They really polish the edge quite a bit more. I use a touch of water on them too, though. Just a little bit. So the reason I went with the Wicked Edge, I initially got rid of the KME. I was sharpening for people back then as well. I was, doing it for money. So I had the whole system. I had the whole deluxe KME, and then I bought the lapping films and everything, so I could get perfect mirror edges and everything. And I really liked the way the whole system worked. But what I felt like, and the KME is a great system, don't get me wrong. But I felt like, especially on blades like Spyderco, something on a full flat grind, I was getting 2 different edge angles when I would have it clamped. Because of the way that it clamps, if it's sitting in those jaws just right, and it clamps down on the back of the knife like this, it's going to go to the nearest flat portion. So sometimes it would grab it perfectly, and other times it would want to tilt down like that. So with just having the one arm, by switching it or by flipping it over, the issue is I was getting two different edge angles, which really sucked. It would vary by like 2 or 3 degrees. Whereas on something like this, if the clamp doesn't get it perfectly, I have the little angle cube here, and it can tell me, when I line one of these arms up, what my angle is. And if it's clamped facing one side just a little bit more, well, the angle cube isn't going to lie when I go to clamp on this side. So even though this one right now is reading that it's at 15, 16, 17, 18 degrees. 20. Well, this one, I guess, isn't a good example. I've had some where it looks like they're about 4 degrees different on either arm. But according to the angle cube, it's at the perfect angle. And then by the time I'm done sharpening, the edge bevel is the exact same size on both sides, and it's perfect. So that's kind of where I wanted to go, wicked edge instead. Just be having the independent control over both arms to get the same angle on both sides. I hope that answered your question. I know that was a little bit probably confusing. That is feeling super, super sticky at the moment. This is coming up great. And the thing was too with the KME, it seemed inconsistent to me with the flat grind. Sometimes it would clamp it perfect, and other times it wouldn't. I like the new system. I think the 130 has it. That the new jaws that have the two different clamping sides, those were awesome. That's a fantastic idea. If KME could implement something like that, I might move back to the KME. But as it stands right now, whoops, I like the system a lot. It's just not perfect. So I also cut myself on the KME a lot, believe it or not, because that edge being sitting there perfectly sideways like this, I'd go to reach past it to grab a stone, and I'd catch my hand on the edge. I mean, that's just me being stupid and not paying attention where I was putting my hand, but that was an issue that I had with it as well. I had a couple battle scars on my knuckles from that. All right, we're going to remark again and go to the 1,000 grit. I'll cut the tip of this marker off doing that. This marker is about shot. I definitely have interest in Rex 45 and Rex 121. All right, let me get the rest of your comment here. Yeah, I try and keep my hand below the blade if I'm reaching for anything. I got to be real careful. Going back to Rex 45, I do have a lot of interest in Rex 45. It just seems like a fantastic steel, especially if you can get it hardened to the correct hardness. It seems like Spyderco did a really good job at it when they were doing their run of it. They seem to be like anywhere between like 64 and 67-ish, which is real similar to what this is. This is anywhere I've seen from like 65 to like almost 70. So if I could get my hands on some Rex 45 that I know was a higher Rockwell, I would definitely be down to test some. As far as Rex 121 goes, I would love to see Spyderco make a blade in that as well, considering it's basically, from what I hear, from what little experience that people have with it, it seems like it's Maxamet, but on steroids, even better. So as far as both of those steels go, there's something I'm crazy interested in. Rex 45, I believe, is real similar in composition to Hat 40. I have very, very limited experience with Hat 40. I had one of the little Warncliffe Delicas for like 2 weeks. It seemed like a good steel when I had it. I wish I would have kept it, though, to use a little bit more. That was before I really started making a bunch of these steel testing videos. That would have been a fantastic one to have around. But it seems like the Rex 45 stuff is quite a bit harder than what any of the Hat 40 stuff was, which is kind of interesting. I wonder why they're doing that. Oh, and by the way, we're moving on to the 1,000 grit now. And having a steel like this too, I just feel like more steels should be pushed to the limits like Maxamet, just because of the fact that something like this high of a hardness, and I mean it can take this high of a hardness, um, the results as far as edge retention goes and just edge stability have been awesome. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff with this knife, cutting plastic and cardboard and stuff, and I've really seen no edge deformation whatsoever. It doesn't really roll. It doesn't even take visual deformation, which is really like crazy to think about. If you look down on it with the light perfectly shining on it, um, over the past week and a half, like I said, I've used the crap out of it. And the only thing I can see is like one tiny little shiny spot, but the edge is now dull. So I mean, it's wearing out at a microscopic level. It's really funny because you can't really see it. Now, if Spyderco makes a Maxamet Para 3 lightweight, I'll have to buy one of those. Even if they start remaking the Para 3 in Maxamet, I know that they had issues with it. I love the Para 3. I've had 3 or 4 variations of it. I've sold every single one of them, which I don't know why. I've never had a standard one. I've always had the sprint runs. I had the first crew wear run, and then I had the Jade and M4 from Blade HQ, and then I had the River's Edge exclusive as well in 204p. And that's a perfect knife for me. It's just a great package. It's easy to open, easy to close, really good size. I'm really liking the native, by the way. This is my first ever native, and this thing's just about as perfect as a EDC knife can get for me. It makes me wonder why I have any knives other than this. Honestly, I look at my other knives and I'm like, well, what can those do that this can't do? It doesn't have all the glamour of something like my Sabenza, but at the same time, it does everything just as well, and in a cooler steel too. They had issues with the Para 3 and the PM2 in Maxamet. What they were having happen was they had the initial batch get out. I know that it was delayed for a while, well after when the Native and the Manix came out. So with the initial batch that got out, they got snatched up pretty quickly, but they were having issues with the blades warping. So people would be looking down at their PM2 and it would be perfectly centered out towards the Spidey hole, and then when it got down towards the tip, it just took a nosedive to one side. I mean, it was on some it was really noticeable, others it really wasn't. They were just having issues with the heat treat with that blade warping. I think it has to do with the really quick distal taper that those two knives have. How it gets so thin so quick out at the tip that they're having issues with it. Now, what I don't understand is that they're having, or this knife I think is almost just as thin at the tip. Maybe not. Maybe the swedge gives it the appearance that it's a little bit thinner than it really is, but they don't have any issues with the Manix or the Native 5 for some reason. I don't understand why. I mean, that's why I don't work at Spyderco. I don't understand why, but it's interesting. It's something that I wish that they can figure out. And at the moment, they say that it's going to be re-released in Maxamet, but they don't really know a date when yet. It's crazy that they're even taking on responsibility of manufacturing a steel like this. I mean, this is just an absolutely crazy steel if you think about it. It has to be incredibly hard to machine something at this high of a hardness. It's really incredible. The finish on this is coming out really nice too. It's taking a really nice even finish. Feels incredibly sticky. I'm eventually going to have to cut a sharpening choil in here. My personal favorite steel, I'm not going to lie, through the use I've had, I think it is Maxamet, just because for what I do a lot of cardboard cutting, opening boxes, and I mean, I'm processing 100 to 200, maybe even 300 feet of cardboard a week. Not including what I do for my cut tests. I've used this knife too to prep cardboard for some of my cut tests. But I also really like LC200N. That's a fantastic steel. I think it's finally starting to gain a little bit of popularity, which is awesome because it deserves it. It's a really fine grained steel. It takes a super, super keen edge. Like I said, it's one of those steels that when I do those heel to tip strokes here on the wicked edge, it seems to take an edge just as fine or just as good as if I did it the opposite way, tip to heel. It reminds me, well, this is my first ever experience with super glue. I haven't cut anything with it yet. When I refinish this knife, I got a video coming up too on when I refinish this. But as far as sharpening goes, they sharpen up very similar to me. So it's just such a fine grained steel, and it holds an edge real similar to S30V. It was within like 7 or 8% of S30V in my test, and that's awesome. That's crazy for a steel that's 100% rust proof. It's insane. I'm really, really excited about that steel, and that's one of my absolute favorites to use. S30V is another good one. It gets a lot of hate, and a lot of people really, really bash on it. But honestly, that's a really great all-around steel too. What's going on, Mississippi Knife Nut? Good to have you in here. Uh-oh, why'd you have to do that? That's no good. What? The person who sold it to you? You just took the washers out? What the hell? Where was he? Where'd you buy it off of? Facebook? I'm hoping you bashed him on Facebook, because that's nuts. I can't believe someone would do that. For anyone wondering what I'm doing right now, what I'm doing is these ceramic stones. I try and keep any of the diamond dust off of them if I can, and any of the grit from the steel. So what I do is I take this little piece of painter's tape and I just kind of dab it up and down the edge, and that pulls any of that dust or diamond dust off of the knife. Canned air, I think, would work a little bit better, but I don't have any. I'm just trying to minimize as much of the contamination between the two types of stones if I can. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but you can see all the different, all the dust that came off on that. That really does suck, Knife Nut, because that's crazy. Did you pay goods and services? That would protect you. All right, now we're on to the ceramics. The crazy thing about the ceramics is they're so much lighter, so they feel completely different when you're sharpening with them. Here's a little tip: if you're using your ceramics, I like to use a little bit of water on mine, just a tiny bit. You don't soak them or anything. But I have this little water bottle that I cut. Let me see if I can get this to focus on here. I cut like a little cross in the tip or on the cap, and that just lets like a drop or two of water come out at a time. So you can soak any of your water stones or anything with it, and you aren't putting a ton on there. As far as polishing up Maxamet, we'll see. Last time I didn't, but they were still relatively new. They only had like 4 or 5 knives on them. So we'll see this time. They polished up super glue pretty well, but that's a steel that takes a polish pretty easily. It's not like mirror polish, but they definitely have some shine to them. I know you can. I used to be able to too with my KME. I just haven't gotten around to buying all the nice stuff for the Wicked Edge. It's way more expensive. Yeah, I bought. You got all the way up to 1500 grit diamond. I really want to grab those stones, and I want to grab some of the strops for this as well. See, Mississippi, I use the lapping films as well with my KME, and I really didn't like the lapping films at all. I would have rather have went with the strops. The lapping films I felt like wore out too quick, and it kind of sucked having to spend that kind of money on something that just degraded so quick. Believe it or not, it actually does. Right now I'm on the 1200s, and it does look like it's polishing it up pretty well. Last time I got a nice like semi-polished finish on it, where if you had it perpendicular to something, you could definitely see a little bit of reflection. See, I'd make my own straps for this. I hand strap right now. I would make my own for these, but then I still got to buy the blanks and everything, and it's not that much more expensive to just buy the blanks that already have the straps on them. I make my own spray for my strap, though, the 1 micron spray, and that works pretty darn well. I actually got the original factory edge of Maxamet hair whittling off of those, or off of my basswood strap with my compound on it. This is taking a nice, like, semi-polished edge already with the 1200s. Yeah, I agree, Mississippi. It seems to be that it's tough to maintain that same angle on a strap all the way down. You use leather or wood. So you use leather. Go to your local hardware store. Try wood. That is the absolute best media I've ever used for stropping. It cuts any little bit of burr that remains there right off, and I get a much finer edge off of that. The apex seems to be quite a bit crisper off of wood. That is feeling very, very, very good off of the 1200s. Go ahead and move on to the 16s. Just a little bit of water on here. So, fun fact, let me see here. Balsa or basswood? I use basswood. Balsa, I think, is a bit softer, and it would be a little bit closer to what leather is. Basswood is what I use. I got an Ace Hardware locally, just on the road from me, and picked up like a 3-foot section of it, and it was like $2 for a 3-foot section. And I mean, you can make a lot of straps off of a 3-foot section. I only make little 8-inch straps. I've made 5 or 6 straps now. And I just now jumped to the second piece that I picked up. Yeah, basswood and balsa seem to be the 2 most common when it comes to stropping. And Wicked Edge sells the blanks with both, I think. I can't remember. This is taking a really nice semi-polished edge, though. It seems a lot better after these stones have broken in. Oh, what I was saying, a little fun fact for you guys, is that these ceramics that Wicked Edge sells are the exact same ceramics, or at least from the same supplier, as Spyderco's. So the same stuff that's on the Sharpmaker. So the 1200 grit ceramics on this set of stones is the exact same as the 1200 grit fine rods on the Sharpmaker. Pretty cool stuff. If you guys have ever used Spyderco's ceramics, they're top notch. This is going to be a long project for the Maxamet experience. This is probably going to be at least 5 or 6 months total to finish everything up that I want to. Basically, what I'm going to try and do is test this out at so many different edge grits. So I got, I've tested it. This will be the second time now off of the 1600s. 2 different scratch patterns. I'll probably try it off of just the 100 or 1000 grit diamond. I'll try it off just the 800 grit diamond. I'll probably try it just off of the 600 grit diamond. I'm also going to try it with a micro bevel from the Sharp Maker if it can cut it. I'm sure it can, but we'll see just how good it holds up after that. I don't have high hopes for it, but it's going to be it's such a fun little project. The only thing that sucks is that I got to record everything that I cut with it. So that's the only part that sucks, but that gives you at least a reference when I make the videos of how much it cuts in day-to-day use. All right, just a couple real light up and down strokes here to remove any remaining bit of that burr. I'm basically just using the weight of the stones. Let's see what we got. See, you can't really feel teeth off of that 1600 grit diamond or 1600 grit ceramic. But they're there. You can definitely tell when you cut stuff with it, like paper. You can feel the little teeth there, which is cool. We're gonna do a couple more refining strokes here from heel to tip, the dangerous ones that could possibly cut you or dull your edge. You gotta be careful not to accidentally put it on the bottom bevel of the stone here, because as soon as it touches that edge, you're pretty much toast. But that looks like it came up really nice. It has a little bit of shine to it. We still got to strop it, obviously. But let's take it out of the mount here. Looking pretty darn good. Honestly, this isn't that hard of a steel to sharpen. A lot of people, like I said, just struggled with it, posted videos on it, made it to seem like it was a steel that's unserviceable, which through 2 sharpenings now, it's really easy. You just got to take your time. And it did take a relatively polished edge. It's not like a mirror edge by any means, but it's relatively polished. Like I said earlier on in the stream too, it's so hard to get back up into here. It's almost impossible. So let's try and cut some paper here with this edge just off the stones. Normally what I find is my edge is so much better off the straps, but we'll give it a shot because we took so long on this edge just to try and refine it as much as we could. Let me grab some paper. Give me a second. It came out very, very good. So let's see. It's got a lot of aggression. You can probably hear it, just how much aggression that edge still has. But it gets way, way finer off of the strop. Let me grab that. So this is one of my basswood strops. You can see how much metal has built up on there. I got a fresh one waiting when I feel like this one isn't cutting it anymore. But it's crazy just how a little bit of diamond powder and water can make you a nice diamond spray that takes that much material off. So I think I'm going to rotate the camera around a little bit so you guys can kind of see me stropping. Give me 1 second. Alrighty. So normally what I would do is I'd go heel to tip motions there, but we're going to match the scratch pattern that's already there. So we're going to go tip to heel. I don't prefer one motion over the other. It's just whatever I was sharpening with. You can get good results off of both. You probably see your favorite sharpener do this really, really, really fast. But for us average Joes that don't sharpen a ton, I mean, I've sharpened quite a few knives, but I wouldn't say I'm a pro by any means. I like to just really take my time. I mean, this is such a critical step in getting a really good edge that it really pays just to take your time and try and watch your angle as best you can. The cool thing about the basswood strops is you don't need to watch your angle quite as good or quite as much as you do on leather. Leather, if you get up a little bit too high, the leather can wrap around the edge and actually dull your knife a little bit more than what it, a little bit off of the leather strops. But let's see what it's doing off of there. I reduce my pressure later, and it definitely feels finer off of that. But we're gonna go ahead and continue. The cool thing about the basswood strops is you can actually raise your angle just a little bit, and off of that, you're just creating a small micro bevel. It doesn't hurt anything whatsoever. So just something real, just a little bit taller or a little bit steeper than what it was. Now I'm just using extremely light pressure. I mean, you're basically just letting the weight of the knife do the work for you. All right. That is feeling super sharp. I got a phone book over here. We're gonna grab some phone book paper and maybe try and cut that. Rip out a sheet of the phone book paper. Oh yeah, nice and sharp. The only thing is, with this kind of finish that I put on it with the little micro striations facing the way that they were, you got to kind of do a little bit of a draw cut with it. If you have them facing straight out, they tend to push cut a little bit better, but draw cuts tend to work better with this scratch pattern, which is what I end up doing mostly in my daily use anyhow. But yes, it is sharp. It did a good job. Sharpens up nice. I mean, as you guys can see, if I use the pull cut, it cuts beautifully. It's just what I want it to do. It just works better in day-to-day use for that. So Any questions at all on any of the sharpening? I notice we're going on for about an hour and 15 minutes now. My tip's back nice and pointy. It was a little bit more dull than what it was when I initially started. Yeah, that's plenty sharp for me. For a day-to-day use edge, that's perfect. Good to go. Let's drop it a couple more times. No questions at all? Comments? The previous one, is that what you're talking about? If you're talking about the previous edge, I'll have a video coming up here soon with all the totals, but roughly it lasted me about a week and a half of daily use. And I'm cutting things that I really don't normally cut. I'm trying to test the limits of Maxamet. I'm cutting everything, like laundry detergent bottles, juice bottles, stupid stuff. The one I just put on, I'm hoping it'll last me longer than the last one, so about 2 weeks. This is only the second sharpening. I mean, obviously, watching any of the YouTube knife stuff, you know that the factory edges don't last quite as long as, or the edges after the factory edges just get better. So I'm hoping that this one's gonna last me 2+ weeks, just through basically cutting everything I possibly can. Maybe it'll last me more. You'll see increased performance. I think that was the last video I put up, was just OS 8 increased over 100% in edge retention just after 5 sharpenings. So I'm hoping with every sharpening here, I either gain a little bit of edge retention, or I'm figuring out what edge lasts longest, what grit, what scratch pattern, that kind of stuff. I don't think scratch pattern really plays quite as much of a difference. But like I said, I'm hoping right around 2 weeks of my use. I would say I'm a heavier user than most. For normal people, I mean, this would be an indefinite edge. I mean, this is something that's going to last months. But there it is, all finished up. I just cleaned all the Sharpie off. You guys can see it took a semi-polished edge. You can still see the scratch pattern there. It came out really, really, really well. It's about how I expected it to perform, considering how it sharpened up last time. It performed very similar this time. So pretty much exactly what I expected. So through 2 sharpenings now, I've had 0 issues with Maxamet. So, I mean, I don't know where people are getting all the difficult to sharpen stuff out or from, unless you're trying to reprofile, which I'm sure when I try and reprofile, I'll be cussing. Any other questions, comments, concerns? This has been an awesome knife. I've really enjoyed the native quite a bit. This has been one of my favorites so far. I have a Delica. This is like a better, beefier Delica to me. It's just, the blade stock's just a touch thicker. Comes in sweet steels like this. Ergonomically, it's perfect with that forward finger choil. It gives you something to grab onto. I actually don't like the thumb ramp right there. I like it to be flat like that. It tends to work better for me. I cut better with it. You see I got a little bit of patina going on right in there, which is pretty darn cool. That's from cutting up some raw chicken with it. Like I said, use it for just about everything. So if you guys don't have any more questions or anything, I'll probably let you guys go. Yeah, no problem. I really enjoy doing the stuff live. The sharpenings themselves tend to fly by, and I really enjoy chatting with all you guys as well. It's cool too because if I ever encounter an issue, we can kind of talk about it together and then work through it together too. So I like doing all this live too, so because you have the live reactions as well as I can't hide any of the issues that I had with sharpening. You know what I mean? So anyhow, if that's all you guys got for me, I really enjoyed the stream here. It was great talking to all you guys. Thanks for stopping by. And I'll be sure to have a video up, Maxamet Experience Episode 2 here in just a couple of days. Be on the lookout for that with all the totals of use of the past edge of this, as well as some really cool, maybe microscopic pictures of the edge. We'll see. I took some today, so I had my theory about how the edge broke down, and I ended up being pretty much right for the most part. So that'll be pretty interesting. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Have a good one. See you later.